Hey, Mr. Chairman, our guest speaker today is very familiar with all of you. I have a long bio, and if it is okay, I'm going to cut it well short and let you get into it. Many of you know Ben Chandler well, former Attorney General, former Congressman, held many other positions in government, former gubernatorial candidate, earned his graduate degree and graduated from the UK School of Law. But he has always had a passion for healthcare. As Attorney General, he won a $45 million settlement from one of Kentucky's largest insurance companies, and that funding was used to create the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky, of which he is now CEO. And he's here today with an important message that the foundation is focused on. It says in this bio that he's an 8th generation Woodford Countyan, but I assure you he has one foot in the GRADD region as well. His great-grandfather? Was Happy Chandler, Henderson County native, who you know as former governor, former commissioner of baseball, probably one of the legendary figures in the Commonwealth, and we're glad to have his grandson, Ben Chandler, with us today. Ben?
Thank you, Judge. I appreciate that very much. I am an 8th generation Woodford County and through my mother's side, but my father's side is very proudly from Henderson County, and we love it. And I saw that the next agenda item was the state of Henderson County. I've always viewed Henderson County as its own state. In any event, it is a point of great pride for me and for my entire family. And in fact, my father's side, I can tell you, has never been accepted really in Woodford County. Even the people in Woodford County view us to some extent as Henderson County people. But it is a pleasure to be here with you all today. Jatin, and I appreciate all that you do, all of your help with the efforts of our foundation. This gentleman here, Jatin, I guess we've known each other probably 25 years, every bit of that. I can tell you he is very, very well respected from one end of this state to the other, and known by a whole lot of people. I really appreciate your collaboration with us on so many things. The Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky, as the judge said, was created as a result of a lawsuit, but it was endowed, the salient important thing is that it was endowed with $45 million, which I can tell you tickles me. We have the advantage over so many other groups of not having to raise money. We simply have invested the money, and that endowment has allowed us to carry on activities throughout the state. We started with $45 million. We've given away $28 million to different very good causes all over the state, and we now have $55 million. And now that's math that I like, and as I tell people, it's a shame we weren't in charge of the retirement system. You know, we'd be a whole lot better off if we were. In any event, the foundation, and I assume that this slide thing is active. I'll figure out, see if I guess I only have to use these arrows and that'll be enough. Yes. That's about the extent of my ability with technology. But the foundation has one mission, and one mission only, and that is to improve the health of our people in Kentucky. We are nonpartisan, we are nonprofit, and again, we're not interested in anything other than trying to see our population, our people, who we all care about, become healthier. And you all probably know some of the issues. I'm sure that you do. The one that has always jumped out at me was the fact that we here in Kentucky lead the entire United States of America in cancer. Now, I have to tell you, that is entirely unacceptable. It's certainly unacceptable to me, and I guess that it's unacceptable to everybody else in this room. we've got to do something about it, and the good news is we actually can do something about it. It just so happens that we also lead the nation. Actually, we go back and forth with West Virginia for this honor, but we lead the nation in smoking. Now, over one third of all cancers are directly related to smoking. Directly. What that tells me is that 1/3 of the cancers are preventable. And we ought to do our dead level best, where and when we can, to try to prevent the occurrence of those cancers. We lead the nation not only in the incidence of cancer, but in mortality from cancer. Our people also die at a greater rate than anybody else in this country from cancer. So, in my mind, it's a particularly important thing. Now, tobacco use, and I understand we're in tobacco country, the whole state's tobacco country. In the 1990s, out of the 120 counties in Kentucky, 119 of them had tobacco farms. My own family in Woodford County, we grew tobacco probably for over 200 years, until about 5 or 6 years ago. Of course, the tobacco buyout changed all that. The tobacco buyout that took place in 2004 reduced the number of farms in Kentucky that were growing tobacco from 60,000, if you can believe it, to fewer than 4,000. I mean, it's been a dramatic reduction in the impact, the economic impact that tobacco has had on Kentucky. And now, the value of the tobacco crop in Kentucky is about $370 million annually. The cost of using the product in Kentucky is almost $2 billion. Now think about that. $370 million to the good, $2 billion to the negative. It strikes me that you don't need to be a mental heavyweight to understand that we're being harmed by this, and our health is being harmed, and we need to do something about it. So the foundation's been working on that, among other things. We have moved into advocacy in a big way, advocacy on public policy. We're not as much a grant-making organization as we used to be, because actually $55 million is not a whole lot of money for a foundation. When you're giving away money as a grant-making organization, you can only give away a couple million a year when you have that amount of an endowment. You're not going to change and move the needle, essentially, in the numbers across an entire state of almost 4.5 million people by giving out grants. You've got to be involved in policy. Governments on the local and state level have got to be involved, and they've got to enact policies that are healthful. Our focus areas, as you can see here, are tobacco use reduction, obesity, access to health care, and children's health, and in particular a focus on adverse childhood experiences. Now, that's a plate full of stuff, I could tell you, and it takes a whole lot of effort, but it only scratches the surface of what we need to do about our health in Kentucky. And I will talk to you a little bit about what we're trying to do, but one thing that we understand is health is a community activity. It's not just, you think, okay, it's just an individual thing, and individuals have to be mindful of their own health. Well, of course they do. But it's also important in a community sense, and it's important for the community to enact strong, healthful policies. That will lead to better health in the community, and it will lead to better individual health. We know that. We know that. We've got a lot of evidence for that in a lot of different jurisdictions. And the impact on the community of poor health is dramatic, starting with the fact that it's harder to attract employment in a community because businesses don't want to move to a community that doesn't have a healthy workforce. That's one of the things that everybody needs to understand. That's because they get hammered on the front end and on the back end. Their costs are higher. They have lower productivity on the front end from their workforce, and they have higher health care costs on the back end. So it's extremely important from a community perspective to focus on the better health of the entire citizenry. It's extremely important. I'll talk to you a little bit about tobacco health policy. Here are a number of things, I'm not going to go through all of them, that we've been involved in. These are policies that have been proven with evidence that to reduce the use of tobacco products. And ultimately, if you reduce tobacco products, there's no question that you'll reduce the cancer rate, you'll reduce, and that's not all, of course, COPD, emphysema, heart disease, all of those things are related to the use of tobacco. But these are things, smoke-free workplaces, for instance, a big thing. Of all of these things, most of them have to be done on the state or national level. For instance, significant tobacco tax increases. Well, we know that if you jack up the price of the product, people will use less of it. And 2 sessions ago in the legislature, we led an effort statewide to increase the cigarette tax. We wanted $1 or more increase, but the legislature decided to give us 50 cents. Well, I'm a glass half full guy. We didn't get what we wanted, but it just so happens that a 50-cent increase was the largest tax increase on cigarettes in the history of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And in the year after that tax increase went into effect, we now have the figures, we have sold 35 million fewer packs of cigarettes in Kentucky. And we think it is a result of that tax increase. It certainly played a role in it, because that was as big a decrease as we've seen in a long time, and it just so happened to coincide with the tax increase. And we know people are susceptible to price increases. We're working on Tobacco 21. We're actually working with Senator McConnell on that to get a national law. You all may have seen an announcement by him, but we know if we can get the figure increased, or the age limit increased to 21, that'll make a big difference, because young people get their tobacco products often from their friends, and they hang around 18-year-olds a whole lot more than they do 21-year-olds. So we believe it will make a difference. And we've got education and cessation programs that we've been involved in. But all of these things taken together are important. One of the things, the top 2 things, indoor smoke-free workplaces and tobacco-free schools, are things that actually can be done on the local level. And my dear friend from Ohio County here knows, he worked very hard to get an ordinance passed in Ohio County to try to get that county to be smoke-free. We've only got in Kentucky, as far as comprehensive smoke-free policies are concerned, we've only got 6 counties out of the 120 that have adopted comprehensive smoke-free policies. Now, we have a number of cities throughout Kentucky who have, but the upshot of it is about 34% of our people are covered by tobacco smoke-free policies in towns. In communities and in rural areas all over the state, 34%. And the lion's share of that is in Lexington and Louisville, as you can imagine, and they've had smoke-free policies for a number of years. One of the things that those policies have shown is that not only are they effective, and we've got, I'm not going to go through that, we've got information data that shows that they are effective in reducing the smoking rate, and they do not hurt business. In fact, the information that we've got, the data that we've got, shows that business has actually improved, because there are a lot of people in the community who will not frequent smoking facilities because, you know, they don't want to be subjected to that. It's interesting, we polled this issue quite a bit, and on a statewide basis, 70% of the citizenry here in Kentucky is in favor of these smoke-free laws. 70%. And we know that the western half of the state, the number is 67%. And the other interesting thing is that it doesn't matter what party you belong to. If you're independent, Democratic, Republican, doesn't matter. The number is between 65 and 75 for all three of those cohorts. So it's something that cuts across party lines. Here's a map of the smoke-free areas. You can see that Davis County is in yellow. That's because there are some significant exemptions in Davis County. But you can see that the light blue on that map is where we have smoke-free ordinances, comprehensive smoke-free ordinances, and it's not very many places. The most recent, which was kind of surprising to all of us, was Perry County in eastern Kentucky. And that was surprising because the smoking rate in eastern Kentucky is massive. In fact, the smoking rate and the cancer rate in that, particularly the southeastern part of the state, is by far the highest in the nation. It just stands out as the high. It's even way above the rest of Appalachia, that part of Kentucky. And our people are dying up there at an incredible clip because of this. Tobacco-free schools was the latest thing that the foundation was involved in, and we were involved in an effort to try to promote tobacco-free schools. At the beginning of the last legislative session, 42% of the districts in Kentucky were already covered by tobacco-free laws for their whole campuses. 42%. Now that represented 58% of the students because some of the bigger districts were included. Certainly the ones in Lexington and Louisville, which are the two biggest cities in Kentucky, were included, and that caused the number to go up. But you can see from the map there. Now your all's area has actually done pretty doggone well in this respect. And I'm told that McLean County has now, their schools have now passed it. But we got a tobacco-free law, tobacco-free schools law bill passed in the last session of the legislature, but it had an exemption in it. The legislature decided to put a clause in that allowed schools to opt out if they wanted to. Now, what that meant was that it was a question as to whether that law would be effective at all, because school districts could continue to do what they wanted to do, and they have until July 1st of next year, 2020, to enact a policy. Well, we'll be announcing the early results of this, but I can tell you that right now that it's been very successful and the number has climbed dramatically. We don't have all of the school districts in Kentucky yet, but we'll be working on that. We're going to try to do it. Union County in the GRADD district is one that we could use some help with. That would be wonderful if we could get Union County to be interested in this. But anyway, what we know, this is about changing the norms. This is about sending signals to the young people that they don't need to be using these products. And I'm sure that you all have heard the big thing today now is the epidemic of vaping. Vaping amongst young people has just exploded throughout Kentucky and throughout our high schools. Kids are using those products in school, and now these tobacco-free laws cover vaping products. That, of course, doesn't mean that they will stop all of them, but it will. You got to start with the policy. It's the first thing you got to do. So getting this policy in place across Kentucky is going to be important, particularly important now for our schools because of the vaping epidemic. These vaping products are absolutely chock full of nicotine. So what they're doing, among other things, they're addicting an entire new generation of young people on nicotine. And what we know from the science, they also have in them heavy metals and other things that are cancer-causing agents. But the nicotine that's in them, the young brain is developing until age 25. Now, mine stopped developing a long time ago, but the young brain goes up to the age of 25 and in development, and this retards that development. It really harms the development of a young brain. In addition to that, it changes the pathways in the brain if you use enough nicotine to cause those individuals who become addicted. And by the way, nicotine is one of the most addictive substances on earth. But when people become addicted, particularly at a young age, it changes their brain in such a way to make them more susceptible to addictions of every other sort. So it has an impact on illicit drug use, the use of opioid products, and so forth. You're much more susceptible to being addicted to other things. So it really is a significant public health issue, and the thing that's interesting about it is that most people don't know that they're harmful. That's what we did focus groups throughout the state, and we found out that the kids don't know they're harmful, the parents don't know they're harmful, and many of the teachers don't know they're harmful. So that's one of the things we've got to do, is we've got to get an education program out there in a big way, letting people know that these products are tremendously harmful, particularly to youth. We've seen in the last year a spike in the use of e-cigarettes. That's what the vapes are called, e-cigarettes. The spike has been 78% in 1 year amongst high school students, and a 48% increase amongst middle schoolers. I mean, it really is. It's a shocking thing what's happening. So those are the things that we're basically doing on the smoking front. In order to get these laws passed, we put together a coalition, and we believe very strongly in health coalitions, both on the community level and statewide. We put together a statewide coalition, and these are some of the representative groups that are involved in this coalition, but we've got 210 groups that are members of the coalition, and they represent lots of interests. You've got business interests, you've got faith-based interests, you've got certainly healthcare interests, advocacy groups like the American Lung Association, education groups like the School Board Association, lots of folks throughout Kentucky, the KMA, the Kentucky Hospital Association. All these groups have been very much involved in this, which has given us some of the oomph that we need to pass these laws. And that's why coalitions help a great deal. Here's the youth cigarette use, e-cigarette use in Kentucky. I've already talked about that. Juul, J-U-U-L. I don't know if y'all heard of that, but that is a tremendously popular product. You can see it's that slender device and the little pods that stick in them. They have a battery in them, and they can be recharged in the computer. They're attractive, they have a nice feel about them, and the kids love them. They're very, very popular. They're the cool thing now. And they've got about 80% of the market, I think, and they're at least a third of that company is owned by Philip Morris. Now, off smoking, onto the effort to try to basically get people to eat better and move around a lot. That's what we're trying to do with work on our weight projects. We have done this in several counties, including McLean County here in Kentucky, 6 different counties, and we got policies on the local level put in place, and some of those policies, as you can see there, complete streets, expanded physical education, healthier foods, shared use of facilities, school facilities with the community at large, like gymnasiums and so forth, walking trails, rules for physical activity, increased physical activity in the schools, all of that sort of thing we've been working on. And in the counties involved, there were 6 counties throughout Kentucky, McLean being one. They put a lot of these policies in place. Here are the McLean, some of the things that were done in McLean County. And we're very proud of these successes, and we think over time they will lead to a healthier population. Adverse childhood experiences, we have focused on this in Jefferson County in particular. We put together a coalition in Jefferson County. It has been tremendously successful. An adverse childhood experience is what happens to a child at a young age that is traumatic, basically trauma in a child's life. What we know is that if a child has a certain number of traumatic events, it's directly related to their health later in life. You can almost be certain that they're going to have poor health, among other things, among other negative impacts, if they have these adverse childhood experiences. And they include things like violence in the home, a parent in prison for one thing or another. They include broken homes, just a number of different things. And we have made a great deal of progress in this regard. These schools that have put these efforts in place, basically what it is it's training to try to get teachers and other school people to understand and recognize when a child has had a traumatic experience in their life and to try to deal with it in the right way. Basically, what they learn to do is instead of saying to the child, "What's wrong with you?" they say, "What's happened to you?" And it's a different way of looking at it, and it really has a big impact on the child's efforts. But anyway, as I was saying, local policy for health improvement, really important. The coalitions that are put together are really important. It's a community activity. We're all in this together. It's important for our communities to be healthy. And the added advantage is if we can get community health and community coalitions put together throughout the state, it builds towards successful state policy. It creates a tipping point to have successful policy toward good health on the state as a whole. Anyway, those are the things that we're up to. We're running around the state trying to provide leadership on this issue, trying to come into communities and suggest to everybody that if we can do something about this, this is going to be in everybody's best interest. Because at the end of the day, one thing that we have in common is we all love the Commonwealth of Kentucky. It's special to us. My granddaddy used to say that he never met a Kentuckian who wasn't coming home. And that was his way of saying, this land and these people here are special to us. And we owe it to ourselves to be the best that we can possibly be. And as a community, acting together to uplift the health of our people, we can accomplish that. Because there isn't anything more important than your health. Doesn't matter what else you have. Doesn't matter how much money you have if you don't have your health. Just doesn't. So we're trying to improve that. We're trying to get everybody to work together. And we sure are happy to have your all's help in any way that you have given it and will give it in the future. Thank you very much.